Hi, you're watching Talking About. I'm Cara Kilduff.
And I'm JC Alvarez, and we're so happy that you could join us today on a very special Talking About.
Oh my gosh. Wait, can we just say, like, I don't like those Dallas boys. I do not. I'm used to my New York boys, and because they're New Yorkers, I love them more. And I do not like those Dallas boys. They are, whoa.
Oh gosh. Yeah, they're. I saw a preview. I got a preview of the first episode, and it's.
Let me tell you. Okay, wait. I'm sorry. We're gonna get to our guest.
We gotta
but
introduce Anthony Brown.
I could just tell if you had like Derek and like our boys and like a kind of like a West Side Story style fight with the Dallas boys, like they would get their asses beat. That's all I'm saying. I'm a New Yorker.
Well, that's what. Well, that's why we're glad we're joined today.
I'm all sweaty now.
That's why we're really happy that we're joined today by Anthony Brown, who's the executive director of the Marriage Party.
The wedding party.
The wedding party.
Oh, you practiced that so many
Or
times.
not.
He did.
Of the wedding party. Of the wedding
Welcome.
party.
Yes.
Elaborate on that. Tell us a little bit about what that exactly is.
The wedding party was a labor of love. A group of friends got together. It was 1999. It was way before marriage was on the radar for any of the national organizations or local organizations. I think Marriage Equality New York was the only other organization that was out there. But we formed in response to the dearth of positive, accurate media images of gay and lesbian couples and families. You know, after Gay Pride, you would see the most beautiful drag queens and great assless chap pictures, which, you know, are wonderful, vibrant parts of our community,
Or
but
my
they're not
favorite,
all
Dykes
of
on
our...
Bikes.
Exactly. There you go. So we decided that we would produce events, media events, to create awareness about gay and lesbian couples and families. So we staged and produced a large commitment ceremony that kicked off the Gay Pride Parade from 2000 to 2005. And the first year was a mayoral election. We got a lot of press. We became the B-roll for all the major media outlets that needed any footage of gay and lesbian couples. And then it sort of developed into more of an educational organization. The last thing that we did, we had a hand in a CNN documentary called Gary and Tony Have a Baby, which was was the story of my husband and me and our journey towards fatherhood.
And your child is so
He's awesome, isn't he? He is so awesome.
What's
He's amazing.
What's really important to note here is that the American family is changing, and you know, as members of the gay community, we're becoming families. We're becoming husbands, wives. You know, we're having children.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No,
go
I
ahead.
just think that these relationships have always existed. Now that there's different
There's
language to
exactly.
describe them.
You're absolutely
yes,
right.
exactly. You're absolutely right. And we do need to start integrating and adapting ourselves into the fabric of mainstream so that we can change those images of how we're perceived. Otherwise, it's always going to be, you know, A-list images of what the gay community is.
Yeah.
Or
Assless
assless chaps.
Assless chaps, exactly. You know, but honestly, I think
dancers.
we're taking family and we're taking marriage and we're just making it more fabulous. You know, because we're always going to be unique. We're always going to have our own queer consciousness, and we're always going to be independently us. But now we're just independently us, but treated with equality.
Right.
Essentially, in the state of New York, at least.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about that, the emotional and also the intellectual importance of being recognized as a married couple, as a family? Because I think that sometimes amongst the mainstream community, I get the impression, or at least sometimes I hear so many comments like literally like on the, and he wasn't being hurtful, and I think I had said this to John, the night after we got marriage equality, I think I also mentioned to you, my brother said to me, why do you want that?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
And and it wasn't that he was being insensitive.
He was speaking from, that was more telling about your brother than about anything else,
Well,
probably.
but he was kind of like, you know, referencing like, you know, sort of like what had come before.
Yeah.
He wasn't in on the fact that there is a certain emotional, intellectual importance to being recognized as a married couple
And
as a
legal
family.
importance as well.
Yes.
But before I answer your question, I believe, and I think it's really important to note that the marriage victory in New York was the definition of a grassroots victory. Everybody participated in that. You know, I mean, the governor was certainly a critical, aspect of it, and the legislators who fought so hard. But everybody, it seems, really rose to the occasion, and instead of just coming out of the closet, came out of the closet and, you know, walked across the street and said, hey, I'm gay, and this is why I really want to marry my partner of 16 years, which was my husband and I got married on our 16th anniversary. You know, and this is why it's important to me. So people understood it wasn't just this, you know, kind of out there ethereal notion. It was anchored in a personal relationship. And everybody, I think, in the gay community and friends and family of the gay community really, really stepped up to do that and made phone calls and participated in this victory. So I think it's important to just to note that it's all of our victory, and not just the gay and lesbian community, but I think all of New York's victory.
Absolutely.
But
Do you think that this was because I was when it was passed, I was reading that like the fact that New York passed marriage equality, that it was going to be an example for the rest of the country because New York's such a big state. Is that true?
Well, I definitely believe so. I think New York has a lot of power and a lot of influence. I mean, just the sheer number of people that are affected by the law is much more than, say, you know, New Hampshire or Connecticut or Vermont. But I think we also are the leader in so many ways in the world, financially, you know, sort of politically thinking wise, entertainment
well, even
wise.
degrees of fashion, entertainment. Everyone looks to New York as sort of like a leader or the center of. It's like the capital of the world in just so many degrees.
Yeah, and it really is a big deal. But you know, I can't I can't overstate the importance of the simple gift of being able to say, "This is my husband." You know, that your relationship and everything is said in that one simple word. And it's not just I'm talking about a social act now of coming out to a stranger or something like that. It's literally saying, this is the person that legally is respected, you know, under the law. This is the person that gets to make a medical decision for me if I can't make a medical decision. This is the person that, if God forbid something were to happen to me, will be the guardian of my child. You know, there are a lot of really, really important.
This person's my family.
Yeah, exactly. And that type of thing, I think, just the word to use husband and wife. You know, somebody said, somebody asked me, I think they were from where our surrogate mom, we had a child with a surrogate mom, she lived in Southern Virginia. He said, well, you call Gary the husband, does he call you the wife?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Only on role-playing days.
That's right. Yes, we won't talk about that. But it was very interesting because they are so they were so stuck in
roles.
the wording of it, you know.
Yeah.
But it really is, I mean, aside from just the emotional importance of being able to do that, marriage really is hugely important. And it wasn't as though one day we got this new law for gay people. They changed marriage for gay people. It's just, they just made it available to us. This is what all of our straight friends, family members have had and can avail themselves of. And I'm just talking about New York. I'm not talking about federally yet. But there's huge benefits to marriage. You know?
Absolutely.
So it's a key victory.
Do we know how many New Yorkers have gotten married since marriage equality passed? Do we have a number?
Question.
Because
that's a good question. I don't know.
I almost felt like the day after what was it? It was like a 30-day waiting period. And I think that someone had said to me that that first day they had to open City Hall up early.
They did to accommodate because they got applications online, and then they had to do it by lottery because there were so many applications. And then they opened up for like the Sunday before the Monday,
which I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. It was, I believe, if memory serves, it was several hundred that actually got married on the first day. I had the privilege of meeting the first couple to get married in Brooklyn. We actually settled on the lineup for the show. Too late for me to invite them to be here, but I would love to have them in the future. If you're watching, call me. But it was just such a monumental thing, and just so many people went for it. And you know what the final tally is the wrong word. The current tally is. I would love to know.
Yeah, I would really be interested in seeing, and also because I mean even. I know that a lot of legislators are in support of it. They were saying how passing the marriage equality was going to increase the economy and affect the economy in a positive way.
Well, certainly the marriage industry is going to be affected.
Sure.
You know, it's huge.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Freaking expensive to get married.
And we have a caller. We have a caller. Hi, caller. Can you hear us? Are you there?
Okay.
Oh, they hung. Oh, okay.
Well,
call back.
We want you to call in. Our number is 718-460-9802. We welcome your questions, comments, and please give us a ring.
Yeah, and we're really fortunate to have Anthony Brown here representing the executive director of.
The wedding party.
I'm really smart.
You should be glad I didn't ask you to get my work title.
Which
I
is,
know that.
That was really. I
yeah.
was like listening. I was like.
Oh, you see, if she was confused, then then I understand. That
I was trying to actively listen. It was very difficult. You know, I felt like we were asking for directions, and like men never listen when somebody's giving them directions.
Yeah.
You were giving directions, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna be his backup. You know.
That's why I use Garmin.
There you go.
Thank you.
Oh, is
The
that?
new iPhone is supposed to be like that.
Hello.
I know, right?
Oh, caller's back. Speaking of iPhone, hi caller, how are you?
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Okay, this is Trayvon calling from St. Albans, Queens.
Hi.
welcome.
I was wondering, with the gay marriage now in effect in New York, how you think the divorce lawyers? You think they probably happy about this? Because let's be honest, I'm sure that there'll be plenty of gay divorces, as like there are gay heterosexual marriages. So I'm sure they're gonna make out. They're gonna make out all right.
You're absolutely right, Siobhan. One of the biggest lobbying groups for gay marriage for marriage equality was the matrimonial bar.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, you're right. Relationships are relationships.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Wow.
And for some, relationships are a business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
don't mean that
that's-
in the prostitution type way.
Sure.
Well, I mean, we of course would hope that now with marriage equality, there are a lot happier, stable families out there, absolutely. But of course, things happen. You need to prepare.
But that's one of the most, and I'm glad Siobhan brought that up, because that's one of the most important elements of marriage is
Yep.
divorce.
Yep.
Because my day job, I'm the head of the non-traditional family and estates division of the law firm of Albert W. Chinesi and Associates.
I would have never gotten
There you
that.
go. awclawyer.com. And I would get clients coming in who were in long-term relationships,
Yep.
absolutely unprotected. One partner would have been the biological parent of the children. The other partner would work and earn cash and put her money in the partner's bank account. And then they would split up, and there was absolutely no protection whatsoever for that poor non-moneyed partner.
Yeah.
But if partners are married now, the courts will not allow someone to fall between the cracks.
Because it'll literally fall into the
Because-
jurisdictions of
Exactly,
those
because under matrimonial law, there are certain requirements that when someone gets a divorce, there has to be equitable distribution of property that has been gained during the marriage. Now, this is the issue that's going to come up. People have been together. My husband and I were together 21 years now. We got married on our 16th anniversary. But if we had property in that, first 16 years of our relationship, and we got divorced now, that first 16 years wouldn't really exist in the eyes of the court. So there are a lot of people who are getting married now, been together forever, and they're going to have to deal with those sort of equitable distribution issues. But it's a social safety net. Marriage provides a social safety net. So if someone's not going to be put out on the street or put out on welfare because they got divorced, divorce actually is a protection.
And it's also why we still have to continue to fight to make sure that this is something that becomes a federal law, not just something that's
Absolutely, and I think that's the biggest glaring problem with this, is that it's not portable.
Right.
There are certainly a number of really substantial benefits that you're going to get in New York if you die without a will. Your spouse not only inherits, but is the only person who has standing to challenge that will in court. So an ugly anti-gay family member, if you're married, they can't come in and challenge that will anymore because they don't
And they
have
rear
standing
their
to come in.
heads in those moments.
They can,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
That's when someone dies, unfortunately, that's when the ugly comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now people will qualify for spouses' health insurance, to go under their, depending on the company that they work for. There's so many different state benefits that are good, but unfortunately, if you leave the state, you have to do all of the preparation that you would have done if you were not married. The things that I have built my practice around up until the marriage law, you have to do that if you're going to travel outside the state, if you're going to move at some point in time. There are going to be interjurisdictional conflicts that are going to come up. And until DOMA is addressed, the federal part of DOMA is addressed, then the problems are going to be there.
Are there some specific things that you can point out to the viewers that they absolutely must attend to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the first thing is you have to have a good estate plan. You have to prepare for what nobody wants to think about. You know, that you're going to die, or
You're writing this down.
or yeah, write it down. And nobody wants to think they're going to break up. So so basically, if marriage is good and that it's going to provide for that social safety net, but you should definitely have a will. You should definitely have a living will and a medical power of attorney. Those are the documents where you get to say what treatments you do or don't want in an end-of-life situation, and you get to name someone specific to be your medical agent if you can't be. Now, by default, in New York, if you're married, your spouse is your medical power of attorney. But if you don't have a living will, you're Terry Schiavo. And I don't know if you remember the Terry Schiavo situation.
Wow.
It was a woman in Florida who
Yeah.
had some very severe issue happen through, I'm not quite sure, I think she had like an eating disorder or something, and was so massively incapacitated that a court had to step in and name a guardian, or basically her husband was her guardian,
Yes.
but then they separated. Her parents wanted to keep her alive. The husband didn't want to keep her
Yes.
alive.
That was complicated.
But she did not have a living will. That's why that happened, because she didn't make her wishes known. So that's one of the protections that everybody should do, is everybody should have a living will. And if you have children, certainly, unless you are in a co-parenting situation where a gay man and a lesbian come together for the sole purpose of having and raising a child, then one parent, like in my situation, I had to adopt my son. He's my
Which is
husband's
common, right?
biological
That's
child.
the way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the only way to be absolutely sure that that my relationship with my son is set, and it is portable across the country because of full faith and credit. I went through all of the things that the court required for the second parent adoption, had the home study, had the background checks, and the fingerprints and all of that stuff. And now nobody can challenge my relationship with my son.
It's like you're doing battle.
You
as a-
can't.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as like drunken parenting. You know, you can't get drunk one night and have a kid when you're gay or lesbian. It's very considered. You know, so you really have to think through it. And that's one thing actually that's very encouraging, because a lot of my clients who've been together for a long time, who I've done estate plans for, they're calling me now and saying, you know, we're thinking about getting married. What does it entail? And I'm having these great conversations with people, you know, and people are really entering into it cognitive of what it means, what marriage really means.
They're almost taking it a lot more seriously than I guess the heterosexual community has over the last several years.
Certainly, I believe it's more conscious for us. I really do.
Well, you know,
Especially the
it's
part
not
about
taken
having
for granted.
children.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's something that we had to fight for.
Right, exactly.
And
exactly. It's
many
something that
of
we
us are still fighting for.
And I bet you anything that this actually, when you really think about it, this could have a really changing effect on even how heterosexual couples view marriage, because we're going to be introducing a lot of these complexities to our relationships when we walk down that aisle, and we're going to be telling other people about those experiences, and then when they approach it, regardless of their sexual orientation, they're going to think it out almost as detail-oriented as this is happening.
It's really fascinating, because I think now, as more people go to their gay friends and families' weddings, they're going to see it in a completely different way. Because I know from my husband's and my wedding, it was one of the most amazing experiences that we totally got, that our lives were different after that. Our relationship was different, even though we'd been together for 16 years up until that point. Standing in front of that room of friends and family with, you know, a minister basically professing our love for one another and our commitment, and getting the commitment of our friends to support us. It was huge, and it was really life-changing. And you understand the importance of that event, you know.
How did your son relate to that? Because your son was present for the.
No. We got married 5 years ago,
Oh, okay,
and he's 2.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
it wasn't a shotgun wedding.
No, it wasn't a shotgun. No, we did it right. We got married and then had a baby.
Oh, good.
We're old-fashioned. Yeah.
And that must be really, really great in that regards, because you're probably now meeting all of these, new families that are coming together, because there's so many gay single parents
Yeah.
out there that are getting married, getting together, and creating all these, big nuclear families, Rosie O'Donnell. So it's sort of like it must be really interesting from that perspective of becoming a parent and seeing all of that.
It is.
changing.
It's really fascinating. That's the favorite thing that I do as an attorney, is second parent adoptions, because it's all good. I'm using my powers for good, and it's a happy,
have to,
wonderful
that's
thing.
nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And now that I've been through the process myself, I think I understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, you
and
do.
doing it, so it's a great thing.
That's what I like about having you've
living
gone
it.
through it, and
Yeah.
like I think I imagine that you're extremely helpful as an attorney. Like,
Yeah.
like
know.
that's important stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we all deal with it. Like with lesbian couples, the question comes up with family, do I have a known donor or do I have an anonymous donor?
Yep.
And I'm a known donor to 2 children with a lesbian couple who live around the corner from us. So it's really important to be able to ask yourself first as the couple, do we want to have a father role in the child's life? Do we want to have someone who's present? And if they say no, if we only want to have 2 parents, mom and mama, then use anonymous donation. It's a little bit easier, in the process also.
One of my friends she just got married, and she and her wife are going through that same process right now, deciding, we want to have a child, but how are we,
Who's going to be pregnant
Yeah.
first or whatever. Yeah, it's a really interesting and emotional conversation, but the end result is amazing.
Yeah,
really
the
is.
American family has really changed so much.
And I
It's-
know that's so threatening to so many people. Our families. But if
Yes.
you sat in, a dinner with us, it's pretty mundane. We're pretty normal. We say blessing before we eat like everybody else, and it's a natural experience.
Yeah, but
it's all
I'm-
about family and love.
Right, but unfortunately, it can bring out the worst in some people. I was reading. There's a representative who just had a child with his partner.
Jared Polis.
Yes.
I heard about
and
him. Yeah.
almost immediately tweeted that he has a motherless child.
Yeah. No. I think they tweeted that he's flaunting the fact he had
Oh.
a motherless child. It's me. Well, aren't you concerned about bringing this child into the world without a mother? And I looked right at him and said, I'm the biggest mother that child would ever need. Thank you very much.
Well, I think people forget that a child doesn't just wants to be loved and appreciated and really just
Yeah.
guided in that respect, and that because there are only 2 sexes on the planet, male and female, that child's going to have just as many women impacting his
Exactly.
life as any. I mean, he's got a grandma, he's got aunties, and the same goes in lesbian cousins. In lesbian relationships, a lot of my lesbian girlfriends have children, and it's like they oftentimes make comments of like this kid has so many dads.
Yeah.
So
Which it's not for a lack of love. There's so
Yeah.
much love because I think we all support each other. You
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
I think there's really a sense of camaraderie, and while a lot of people may not choose marriage for themselves, or a lot of people may not choose to have a family for themselves, they don't stand in the way of other people doing that within the community, which I think is wonderful.
It's very much a generational thing. You see, the next generation, specifically more the under 35, under 30, are much more open-minded because it's in their life. They see it happening, and they haven't been taught that it's not. They haven't been taught it's
Right.
abnormal because
Right.
it's not abnormal.
That thought is a relic to them.
Yes.
And then there's the 20-somethings that are growing up in a world where their pop culture, they're going to know nothing but, equality
Sure.
in families.
The
and
number one show
marriage.
on television is Modern Family, and
I love that show.
Yes.
and it
Oh.
shows
So
every
funny.
single angle of what American Modern Family is. What are some of the things now? I mean, it's like, because seriously, it's. I know marriage equality just passed and the whole 9 yards, but are there still some steps that we need to take, or some steps that we need to be aware of going forward, to make sure, especially as the elections come on, that these rights are not affected in any way?
Well, I think the grassroots work that we did in speaking with people and talking to people about this and introducing ourselves and doing it fearlessly, I think that is going to be a continuing and ongoing issue. I think people are going to realize New York's not going to collapse because we have marriage equality, as Massachusetts didn't collapse and Vermont didn't collapse.
Or Jersey?
I think, and Cara, you had mentioned something at the table segment. There are always going to be people who aren't going to get us. There are always going to be people who are going to be racist. There's just some people you can't reach. The people that you can reach, you do it with honesty, living your life honestly, engaging them and challenging them. I think now we have a template for the anti-equality opposition, the tactics that they've used and the lies that they've spread. We now know how to react to them. We've done it successfully, and we've pretty much exposed a lot of the lies that they've spewed. you
Right.
know, for exactly what they are. And I think that one of the huge things I hope is going to happen is they're going to release the transcripts or the tapes from the Prop 8 trial. Because in the Prop 8 trial, they dismantled, those lawyers, David Boies and Ted Olson, were brilliant. They dismantled their argument piece by piece by piece and got their side to admit that there's no scientific evidence backing up what they're saying. Everything is based in their own prejudice, which they say is rooted in their religious beliefs, which is awesome. And if they could have that kind of reasoned display, and they're fighting tooth and nail to keep those tapes not, you know, from
sure
coming
they
out.
are, yeah.
But I think the more we expose that, the more we expose that it's just fear. And as you said, Jonathan, as people get older and the next generation kind of assumes its role in society, I think they're going to realize, what the hell were we doing?
You
know?
can't stop the beat.
Motion in the ocean.
Well, you know, it sounds dramatic to say, but I know we have a caller, but like the light is always going to overpower the darkness, and live your life honestly. That's why I think it's so important to be out and be, you know, like, I'm a normal person. I don't have 3 heads, you know, whatever. Do we have a caller?
But if you do want to call in, you have about 2 minutes to do so. 718-460-9802. Call now. This is the minute to ask the questions about marriage, so do so.
How can someone who might be watching get some more information? What is it, you have a website?
I have a couple of websites they can go to. I have a family-related website called timeforfamilies.com. And you can get me at brown@awclawyer.com. That's how you can reach me. And I would love to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like I think that over the next year, it's going to be really telling as we all kind of like settle into, because I think it's almost like we feel like we've settled into marriage equality so quickly that it's almost an afterthought. But really, there's still so much.
There is a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
I mean, even though there are hearts and minds we're not going to change, we still need to make sure people can't get fired because they're gay.
Yeah.
And that has to be federal. I mean, we passed federal hate crimes now, which is great.
Sure.
You know, don't ask, don't tell is a thing in the past, which is great. It's all part of this process, you know. But I think people need to be comfortable in knowing that they're not going to lose their jobs because of who they are. Right. You know, I think that's the next big step that has to happen federally.
Yeah. It's our America.
We're all, like you said, we're all Americans.
Yeah, we're all Americans. What the fuck, man? That guy's still really pissed me off.
I hope we don't run into him on the way home because you're going to be all like, you know.
I should have pushed him off the bus. No.
Well, as we're coming to the end, Anthony Brown, thank you so much for
Thank you all.
Thank you.
for
Thank you
spending
having
the
me.
time with us. Yeah, this was a great treat. Yeah.
Yeah. And this show, along with many others, are on our website, which is www.talkingabout.info. All the links that we mentioned tonight will be there. We welcome questions, comments, suggestions. If you know somebody of interest to the community who you would love to see sitting next to us, please let us know. Drop us
or on my lap.
What? He's not getting it.
This is cable, isn't it?
Anyway, I'm John Griffith.
I'm Cara Kilduff.
I'm JC Alvarez.
Thank you so much and have a great evening. Thank you so much.